Diane Armitage, businesswoman, entrepreneur, writer, and mindset coach. Thank you for coming up. Thanks for hanging out.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Such an honor.
Thank you. And you're a writer you're still a writer for Bob Proctor for 25 years, right?
Right.
So how did that happen? How did he was the first person you not first person you wrote for, but somebody you started writing for
Right, exactly.
a lot of years ago.
I met him in 1994. I was at RE/MAX International headquarters, and we were doing a big convention.
Real estate.
We were randomly being, assigned to the speakers, and I was randomly assigned to Bob Proctor to kind of get him from place to place at the convention. And so I heard him in his keynote, and I was walking him to his workshop, and in that hallway between the keynote and the workshop, he convinced me to start my own company. Because I told him, I said, I've been thinking about being a freelance writer. And so, he's, whenever you say anything like that to Bob, he just is like, well, why aren't you doing it?
Just do it, yeah.
Just do it. So when I finally left RE/MAX, I flew up to Toronto to start working with a real estate agent. He was bringing me on as his marketing director, and in walks Bob Proctor. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he says, well, I'm talking at this guy's event. And he became my second client. So the day I left RE/MAX, the next day, Bob Proctor became my client. It was awesome.
You're you're from where?
Denver.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you met him out here in California?
I met Bob in Las Vegas at a convention.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you just a second chance in
Canada. Toronto.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Okay, you're like, okay.
It's been the most amazing ride because working with him almost daily for years and years, you just learn so many things from this man, and you have so many candid conversations, just above and beyond the curriculum and the seminars that we worked on together, So I actually put a whole book together that's coming out later this year called Conversations with Bob, and it's just the wacky stuff, like the crazy stuff that he would tell me to do, and things that he would teach me that were just friends talking. It's unbelievable. I mean, my life changed so dramatically in the first year of starting my own business. It was unbelievable, and it's just never looked back.
Did you ever think about doing having your own business? You were thinking about it, and you mentioned it to him,
right?
But then by meeting him, he told you like, "Hey, why don't you do it? Do it." And then, well, why do you think that happened? Why do you think he made you pull the trigger?
I said something to him in the hall, and he kind of stopped and he looked at me, and he kind of just like really looked at me and kind of like surveyed me, and he said, "You're all right. Your brain is all right. So you're definitely a writer." He says, "I think you should do it." And then he just kept walking. And that was really it. It was really it. But it took me a while to get past the hump. We call it the terror barrier. So, I had this job at RE/MAX. I was making like $30,000 a year. It was safe. It was the corporate way.
Right.
And so I stayed there for several months and even waited until the very last day to get a $500 bonus check. And then flew that afternoon up to Toronto, and by the end of that day, I had a $10,000 a month contract. So I was holding on, trying to get that $500. It's amazing.
And then he looked at you, he felt it, and advised you, and that was it. That's all you needed.
Yeah, it was, because I think we all know. Like if we actually ask the questions of ourselves, we have the answer. And, we're all for expansion. Our bodies are just our bodies. We are spiritual beings. So we're always for expansion, always for expression, always wanting more. And there's nothing wrong with wanting more.
What do you think was holding you back when you reflecting on it now?
Well, the paradigm of educating myself to get into this corporate world, climbing the corporate ladder, making the, health insurance, getting all the benefits, everything that's so beautiful in that purported world, when you really are giving so much control to somebody else. And I know that a lot of people have had beautiful corporate jobs and they've loved it all their lives and they retire with great pensions and all of that. For me, I love being an entrepreneur. It's like stepping off a cliff every day. And I love it because you know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the key is the more you challenge it and the more you step up to it, it's just crazy what happens in your life because you take it on, you know? It's a belief factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get better at believing the more you try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the similarities between like competing and fighting and then like, you know, business, it's like the same thing, same feeling.
Really?
It's really crazy. Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it's like you're jumping off, you're stepping in a cage, you go for something, you know, some kind of business venture, you know.
You're right.
It's like the same feeling.
I can imagine.
It's different, right? But it's the same.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. You know, I've shared with you too as well, right? When I was younger and I was a teenager, I read Think and Grow Rich, and I really took it in, and I wrote my goals down, and that's why I moved down to Brazil, and I went down this whole path of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right?
Right.
And then you mentioned to me that Bob Proctor, how old is he now?
86.
86, and he still reads it every single day.
Every day.
Every single day.
Yeah. This is one of the copies he gave me that he signed, which is so lovely. But he figures he actually gave this to me on the 50th anniversary of him picking up the book in October.
Wow.
Of whatever year that was.
Can you put it in front of the camera?
Just, see.
Oh, just let me see the inside.
Yeah.
Sign it too. Cool.
Yeah. It says, keep going by the building. At the time, we were talking about a condominium that I wanted.
Nice.
So I love him. He's awesome. So you found Think and Grow Rich when you were a teenager. I didn't even discover it until I was at Remax, and I was actually reading it at the time that the convention happened and I met Bob. So it was really surprising. I actually had it in my suitcase with me. But you found it when you were a teenager. That's rare. And it's not easy to read.
Right.
Because it's kind of written in that 1930s style.
Right.
Yeah.
But the principles are the same, right? 2020.
Oh, my God, yes.
Whenever he wrote it, what was it, 1920s, 30s?
Yeah. No, it's never changed. I mean, it's all same principles. It's just amazing.
And then you get more into the science now of it, like the neuroscience and all these things, but it's all there.
Yeah. So what did you like the most of the book?
I mean, autosuggestion, just really all the main things of setting goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And writing them down, and then just believing, right? And if you don't believe, like autosuggestion and just all those, you combining all those things, and anything's possible, right?
It is like you have to have all the pieces though, right?
Right.
You can't just say, well, I'm just going to work on this section and this is going to be fine. And you will have some success, but if you use all of the principles of the book, it's astounding. Like, I love decision because I think that that's the foundational piece. If you don't make the decision, you're never going to change anything in your life. And you have to make a committed decision that burns the ships, and you can't make a decision from where you are. You have to make the decision on where you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's
burning the ships. I remember reading that, and that's why I like sold everything I had and I moved to Brazil.
That's awesome.
And I had this mentor in Santa Fe, and he's like, Alberto, do me a favor, think big, think big. I was like, okay. And then I read Think and Grow Rich and burn the ships, like with do you want to tell the story of the burning the ships?
Yeah, I can't remember who the gentleman was who was in charge of the
conquistadors in Mexico, right?
Correct. And they kept
so they wouldn't flee. He's like, he burnt the ships so they couldn't flee. They only had a choice to fight, right?
Right.
To survive.
Exactly. So they had sent over several fleets prior, and they'd all failed, and come back with the tail between the legs. And so they all got to shore, and he burned the ships. It's just incredible. Then you have no option.
Yeah, to fight to the death, and a lot of times that's surrendering to the process, right?
Exactly.
Is where the magic happens.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. But it is a crazy time because I've had moments where I'm just shaking. Like your whole body reacts when you have to make some of these decisions. But man, it's just so crazy when you really walk it through and get to the other side. You look back and you think, oh my God.
Yeah.
Now what can I do?
Yeah. I was thinking of Bob Proctor, like he still reads it and I read it too. You know, I sometimes on a road trip and I put the audio on, or I just look at a chapter and just stimulates your mind and makes you understand things a little bit different, a little bit better,
Right.
right? And but it always seems to help.
Well, I agree. I think, we're always growing. So every time you read it, you're at another level in your life. You're at another thought process in your life. So you always get a new lesson out of it. It just never grows old. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I told you that Bob recently did a big film series called Principles of Prosperity. And he went into each of the chapters.
Principles of Prosperity based on Think and Grow Rich, correct?
Correct, yeah. So he went into each of the chapters, but then he expanded on, based on everything he's learned about the paradigms, about, conscious, subconscious, about the unconscious competent stuff that you and I have been talking about. And so it just became it's a brilliant film. And they've never really released it at a large level. So I brought it into my website, DianeArmitage.com, and have started teaching it and facilitating it with people. And it's just astounding because it brings so much of the life experience in and so much of the explanation in that they were touching on in the day, but they couldn't really talk to it because then people were really going to think they were crazy. So, then, even Earl Nightingale in 1960s, he was doing Lead the Field, and he was doing all kinds of things on The Strangest Secret, which is about the attitude, and still backing away from things like universal law and how universal law operates the whole planet and how if we get in sync with those laws, everything works, whether we're conscious or not conscious to that. Or it doesn't work, whether we're conscious or not conscious to that. So all of that, they kind of stayed away from at the time because even though they recognized it and knew it, it was just too far ahead for the consciousness of the time. But now people are so much more open-minded.
How was Bob Proctor involved with the Secret Project?
He was, interestingly, that was in around 2006. They called him, and they called him on his phone. It's a funny story. They called him on his phone, and he kind of like let it go to messages or whatever because it was from Australia. And so like a month later, he had his assistant, Gina, who's absolutely amazing. He was like, hey, can you just go through all of my messages and see if there's anything important in there? And she said, oh, yeah, well, these people want you to film this movie that they're putting together. And she said it was like a month ago. And he said, well, call them up, see what's going on. So she called them, and they said, yeah, we're just wrapping it up. But, we're doing our final weekend now with the speakers, and we're in Aspen, and we don't know where Bob is. And Gina's like, we're in Aspen right now. They were doing a seminar. So Bob just trotted across the street and spoke. And he has such a power and so much knowledge to this whole thing that he actually became really one of the primary speakers of the whole thing. And it was amazing to be in his company at the time because he was big, and then he was a giant overnight because the Secret just got so big.
So big, yeah.
Yeah. And I got to work on some of that big marketing push out to the world. And I think at this point, something like 400 million people have seen The Secret. And that really opened up a lot of people's eyes because they began to recognize that they did have a choice and they could make choices for their life and that they were in control and it didn't have to be the standard modicum. So it was the initial seed that got a lot of people interested in moving in that new direction, understanding how big they were, understanding that they were limitless, really. And it talks about the law of attraction, which is one of the universal laws. Actually, law of attraction is sort of a sub-law of the law of vibration. Everything is energy. Everybody is energy. We're energy. So as long as you're in sync with that energetic flow, you're either swimming upstream or you're flowing downstream, one or the other. It's how you choose to live your life. And most people don't know. They're unconscious to it, so they just think that they have to struggle. They think that it has to be this way. They think their lives have to be small. They think they have to live in poverty. They think, instead of analyzing that belief, reevaluating that belief, and making a different decision.
How do you break the cycle?
You have to recognize, you have to listen to what your spirit wants. And then you have to recognize that you that you can break the cycle. And you've got to make that decision. And once you make the decision, you can't stay stuck in the how because no one knows how. I mean, you and I have talked about your big goals
Mm.
for TACFIT, and you don't know how you're going to get there.
Mm.
You don't know how. But the fact is you've put the goal out there, and it's in your mind every single day. You've shared it with a few key players. It's in my mind every day. So we're all working toward this thing, and we're taking the small steps that we know, and it begins to unfold for you as you go. You never are up against a wall. The answer is always going to be there. And the universe and the way the world works and the way the law works is always in your favor. It's always here to help. It's not here to put conflict and issues up. So if you get caught in that, like the conflict, the issues, the circumstances, you kind of have to look at that and say, okay, who's running me right now? Whose thought is running me right now? Am I listening to my thought, or am I listening to what the outside world has to say? A lot of times when people make a decision, like when I decided to leave Remax and become a freelance writer, my family thought I was out of my mind. Everybody thought I was out of my mind. And I'd never thought about being an entrepreneur. I didn't even have a business account. I didn't know what to do.
What did your parents do?
Well, they had spent a lot of money for me to go through college.
Right, college, yeah. Get a good job, right?
Right. Get a good job, stay in that safe job, because that's really the paradigm of where most people live. And like I said, it works for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even if you're in a corporate position, are you growing every day? Are you setting new goals for yourself every day? Are you making yourself so that, that people can't let you go because you are so important to that organization? It's key.
I always think of like, well, how do you change that cycle, right? And and like, they say like your self-esteem, right, is created in the first like 8 years of your life,
Right.
So a lot of times it's like your parents' things, right, that, or whoever was around your first 8 years of life really affects like who you are, your self-esteem, and what you think of yourself and all that. And so like some self-help things that I've done, and basically if you go against that, because they're your protectors, they're like basically like God, right?
Right.
And what they say goes, like if it's your mother, your father, whoever. And if you go against that, it's basically you have to if you go against that, it's basically like you're gonna die, right? Because they're your protectors, like their life itself, right? So they're like God. And so you kind of, when you get older and you have those beliefs, those self-limiting beliefs, right? It's hard to shake those off. It's like you have to face, death itself. I mean, it's just an illusion, right? But you have to face that. Like you have to face that. And when we talk about the ships, burning down the ships, like that kind of puts things like you have to be ready to face, ready to die to live, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's how. But how do you do that, right?
Well, what you're talking about are what we call paradigms, which are these beliefs that you have stuffed into your head from early childhood. You came down from and landed on this planet with stuff in your head from a genetic pool that's gone back for generations in your family. So it's not just what your parents teach you. It's not just what your siblings. It's not just what your teachers are like. It's not what your peers are like. It's all this put together that creates this belief in your head. And most of the time, you never question it. You just follow along because that's what everybody does in your world. Whatever world you're in, that's the world you're in. And you accept it and you believe that that is the best it can be.
Yeah.
And so when you decide to make a different choice, initially you're going to have people who just think you're crazy. And if you have that firm belief and if you have the will to keep moving forward, that's where you really start trying to change your behavior. The key, though, is you can try to change your behavior for a while. Like you can say, well, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to lose 80 pounds this year. And you're on it initially, but then you fall off of it. Even if people are supportive of you, you'll fall off of it because you haven't changed the paradigm. You've got this groove like a record in your head.
Replaying.
And until you re-groove that groove with a new paradigm of thought, you're always going to go back to the old way of thinking. So I remember Bob always used to say that you can only break a paradigm through shock or through repetition. So shock being, for instance, a cardiac event. Like I had a good friend who was swimming in an ocean race and he had a heart attack in the middle of the race. that's a shock. That is something that makes somebody pivot and go in a new direction. Traumatic. Fortunately, that doesn't
High
happen
stress.
Exactly. Fortunately, it doesn't happen to a lot of people. It happened in your life, I think a few times. But the repetition and the study and the repetition and the study is what it takes to get past that. And everyone's going to hit that terror barrier where they have this goal up here and they're thinking down here and they don't know how to get past this to get up there. And it's easier for your paradigm to step in and go, you know what, it was probably too big for you to try. Just go back. Just do what you were doing. You know, and a lot of people step back from that terror barrier and they never proceed further, not recognizing that it's just a veil.
Right. Illusion.
It's just an illusion. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a great story about, you know, you probably heard it about a guy walking on a pier and this guy is selling crabs and he's got this big giant barrel of live crabs and they're all climbing all over each other. Yeah, and he's like, why don't you have a lid on this thing? And he's like, it's not a problem. He said, as soon as one starts to get up, the rest of them pull him back down.
Right, crabs. If you put crabs in a bucket,
one
starts to climb out of the bucket, and the other crabs on the bottom grab it and pull it right back down again.
Exactly. So your environment can do that for you. And a lot of times people feel like they have to change a lot of their environment in order to get away from that. Like people who have struggled with alcoholism. They'll have to leave friends. They'll have to leave relationships that they've built all their lives so that they can stay in this new paradigm that they want to stay in. And, you know, it happens even with, I'm sure, as you grew and changed and achieved your goals, and as I grew and changed and achieved my goals, some people fall off in your world. But you gain other people in who are of the same energetic strain, you know? So you start gathering more people around you who are thinking like you and are limitless thinkers like you, and then it really starts to get fun because then you've got almost a mastermind that really supports you. Mastermind
principle.
Yeah,
your friends can make you or break you. You know, like I can't always think about my jiu-jitsu journey, right? Because I really put the blueprint of Think and Grow Rich, right? And I remember like me just reading. I didn't have maybe the people around me. I had like amazing family and stuff, of course, but so I would read biographies, by myself and just get in that mindset, For example, like I just watched Michael Jordan's Last Dance.
Oh, amazing.
And, he became part of the Bulls and all the guys were partying and, they weren't in the same mindset as he was. So he was like a loner. But he always played to win, right? And then he basically created that, right? From his mindset and what he wanted. His parents taught him to always do his best. And he could have, lost that game when they played the Celtics,
right?
The first time when they went to the playoffs, and they could have got a better draft pick, but he's like, no, I'm gonna play to win, and gave him a run, and they're like, who the hell? Well, they already knew who he was, but he really, put himself on the map, right?
Right.
And then it boosted the energy, you talk about the vibration, right, of the whole team, the whole organization. They started to believe.
Right. And then, then of course it spreads out, right? So then you end up with all these fans and this crowd that begin to have that same energetic vibration. So, and then you have this support field that's incredible. And that's really what it's all about.
It's just when I think about all these things we're talking about and how that manifested, right? Him just, doing his laundry by himself, his parents coming in, and him just doing his thing, and all these guys are, partying it up with, drugs and, and hookers, whatever, living the life, and he's there like, doing his laundry and just focused,
Yeah.
And then game time for the playoff, they make the playoffs barely, and then he gives the legendary Celtics a run, right?
Right.
And they're like, what? Like, what we're somebody, And then basically people started to believe, and they created they started to build the team.
Right.
And it was him like doing the best, and then he probably didn't even believe that he could be win the championship, right? But
I don't know. I mean, I think
everything's
that man was incredible.
Yeah, everything's a process. Yeah, but
Right.
It's like a process, right? And of course, once he did that, I think maybe that was the moment where he's like, you know what? That's what I want to be like these guys. I want to be like Magic Johnson. I want to be like Larry Bird. I want to be that he had that in his head after that, and he's like and he showed them that he's on their level.
Right.
And so that was the moment when I think he believed that he could do it.
There is always a moment, isn't there?
Man, I
Yeah.
always think about these moments. I think about Rocky Balboa,
Yeah.
even all the the Rocky series, the moment for me is like, it's the first one, right, where he's like, I don't know if I can. He's like walking around the stadium. He doesn't know if he can do it, but then he tells, Adrian, like, I don't think I can win, but if I go the distance with him, I'll know for the first time in my life that, I'm not a bum from the neighborhood.
Right.
I'm somebody.
Yeah. That was an awesome movie.
And so the fact that, that's he's like, I can't, he can picture himself winning, but he knows he's on the level, if he
Right.
doesn't go down, because nobody's ever gone the distance with him.
Right.
And that's, I feel like the whole series, the whole thing, the whole story is built in that, because he didn't go down,
That's the truth. It is the truth. Yeah.
And then they had to make a second one where he did win, right? And then, all the other ones that came because of that. But I think it comes down to that. And then, of course, you have the Apollo Creed, right, where he doesn't go down. And he looks at him, like, shakes his head, like, oh, man, like, why don't you just go down?
Right, exactly. That was one of the best scenes ever.
But it started from that moment, right, of him telling, like, if I go the distance with him, I'll know for the first time in my life that I'm not just a bum from the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's amazing that you would read these biographies, because I think it's one of the best things to do to keep yourself in that place, especially if you feel like you're on your own or alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of my favorites is Richard Branson. He is such
Richard
a
Branson.
kook.
Mm-hmm.
He's unbelievable. I mean, that guy, I'm sure he has fear. And he wrote a great book called Losing My Virginity. And it was, building Virgin Records, building Virgin Airlines, building. And he's just fearless. He'll walk off the cliff every single time. And he's got to go through these, heart palpitations with some of the things he does. But, one of the things I love about the people who really make it happen, it goes back to Think and Grow Rich and Decision, where, the people who are the most successful make decisions quickly and change them slowly. People who are not successful make decisions slowly and change them quickly. So you see people like you see people like Richard Branson, you see people like Rocky Balboa, made a decision and did not step back. Just said, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to back off, And I love working with you because you make decisions quickly and then you don't back off of them. You're just like, nope, we're moving forward. Okay, decision's made. Let's go. And we're like, oh, okay. Just try to keep up with you. But that's the fun part of working with, an entrepreneur who's on purpose, because you've got a purpose, you've got a vision, you have a goal, you're just on track.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun to work with people like that. They give life to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about the changes and stuff, and I can't help but think about my multiple sclerosis diagnosis,
Right.
and that was the dramatic event. I feel like, even though I maybe, oh my God, I didn't play the victim, but it was, because the reality was maybe in like 6 months, I'm going to have a hard time walking. Maybe in 6 months. Well, I already had like issues with those kinds of things, like the balance and walking, but I'm just so stubborn that I'm good. But what if I can't do jiu-jitsu in 6 months and grab people? Those thoughts did go in my head.
Right.
And it's scary, right?
Right.
It's scary. Like, oh man, my kids. Like, am I gonna be a dad? I'm not gonna be a burden. Like, there's no way.
I know.
There's no way.
Well, and the consciousness of the world is
There's
that
no
once
way.
you're diagnosed with that, your life is pretty much over. There isn't a lot of hope out there. I mean, I know that they're working hard and diligently to change that
Sure.
paradigm. And clearly you're one of the front runners of that paradigm shift. But it takes a lot of people down.
That
and
traumatic,
for good reason.
yeah, for sure. Traumatic event with the right stuff, like tac fit.
Right.
Connecting my breath with the movement, like we talk about all these mindset things like visualizations, but like Scott's whole thing is movement. The movement, just move, right? The quality, focusing so hard on each movement, that's what I felt. I felt myself rewiring inside.
Right. Well, it's a lot like how they teach stroke victims to, re-energize a paralyzed side of their body by using the other side of their mind, by using the other side of the hemisphere.
Right.
But it's not just a mechanical process. It is a full-on spiritual, emotional, physical process as well.
Yeah. You talk about the stuff not only from your parents but grandparents and just ancestors, right? And like I remember, the reason why I feel like I got rewired just on a lot of different levels, but when I was younger, I couldn't have like one piece of chocolate. I would have to eat the whole thing, right? And now, since I did TAC-FIT, it's given me a balance, like I can just have one piece and walk away, whereas I didn't have that when I was younger.
That's associated?
Just my personality, my behavior, it just changed my behavior. Like that was a big thing,
Yeah.
And I know I was cutting weight, but I was like that since I was a kid,
Uh-huh.
and so that was genetically passed down to me, like my dad. I'm sure, like I think my dad, and he had a like really traumatic childhood, but he had, I think it was passed down from me, and like a lot of stress things. He was like he went to Vietnam War, and he had a lot of he still does PTSD, and I just feel like those things were passed down, and I really feel like just moving and this breath and all these things, like it changed that. That was big,
That is big.
That's big. Like it doesn't
Really
seem like
amazing.
much, but like I felt myself like, what? Like I can just walk away after having one piece of chocolate.
Huh.
I
love
you
that.
you yo-yo a lot, right? And when you compete and fight, because you
Right.
cut weight and you make the weight for events, But I was even like that when I was younger.
Huh.
So I feel like it doesn't seem like maybe from the outside something big, but like for me, I know it was something big because it changed my personality
Well, and
for the better.
And it put your mind in charge. So many people think our bodies are in charge of everything. Our bodies are just the battery. The mind is what controls everything in the body. Everything in the body. Every urge, every, thing that says I've got to eat all that chocolate,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, anything that you've got in your body that's programmed into your body is a result of what your mind has programmed into that body.
Yeah.
So that's really amazing because you've reprogrammed so much.
Yeah, I mean, like, right? Like those hormones, like it just, there's a balance, right? And there's a certain therapy too, like, for example, I keep talking about the TAC-FIT because that's been my life, Like
Well, it's amazing.
But just connect a simple thing, like connecting your breath with the movement and having the correct, structure, like alignment,
Mm-hmm.
lines up your hormones, like, your immune system, the inflammation, right? And like, of course, your nervous system, which dictates all of that, right?
Right.
It just lines everything up, so you're in balance.
It's
If it was if we have like the podcast, the mixer, but we're like, it's like a mixer, and we're balancing it, and that's, I feel like, how's helped me make the right decisions, or helping me make the right decisions. For example, like the chocolate thing,
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's really amazing. What's interesting is that when Scott Sonnen started this so many years ago, the consciousness wasn't around it either
Right.
at that time. And he kept moving it forward, and he believed so strongly in it. It's unbelievable what he discovered and what he put into action.
Yeah.
And that he combined it with a fitness movement instead of this is neurophysical, this is more of a medical thing.
Right.
He combined it with a fitness thing. It's just incredible what he did and believed in when there was nobody who believed.
Right.
Because I'm sure that it was a flat line for quite a while for him, and then it went up.
Yeah, I mean, I would listen and read his stories. He broke his back, he had these injuries, of course, his learning disability.
Right.
And like, speaking of the traumatic events, right? But that kind of springboarded these other things. Like, he found his learning style through martial arts.
Mhm.
And why did I have to suffer that much? And then that's what gave him made him go down the rabbit hole and studying like all these different things. And of course, didn't have that neuroscience updates, back then, or
Right.
information, but he just keeps going, and that gave us this stuff all mapped out. All you have to do is just show up and just do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it, and then when you do it, like he said that in the last certification that he taught, he did a NMAP, neuro mobility assessment procedure, and basically, in a nutshell, right, when you do the movements, the quality movements, the breadth of the movement and the correct structure, the new brain cells, or neurogenesis, right?
Right.
Neuroarborization, they connect more.
Right.
And then, in MS, multiple sclerosis, the myelin, it lays down myelin. So you get, you lay down layers of myelin on the nerve.
Beautiful.
Which is good for somebody with MS.
Right.
But, I just felt everything getting rewired, and it just came down to that. and just really focusing hard on it, and really, that's why we're so strict, and that's why we're so like, not that it's rigid, but it's very strict, because we want quality, right?
Mhm.
Not quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been quite an education for me working at it from my level in the last 2 months, but it's really just been amazing. I love it.
What's your favorite chapter of Think and Grow Rich? You asked me mine.
Well, I love decision. I really love, I love persistence. I love persistence because if you don't have persistence, I think that that's a fabulous chapter. At one point, Bob was making this challenge to read it for 90 days straight. And that is a commitment.
Think and Grow Rich?
Read Persistence.
Persistence, the chapter.
Which is one of the longest chapters. And you have to read about all these old time, W.C. Fields and people like that, back in the day. But 90 days was significant.
Was W.C. Fields, was he Napoleon Hill's mentor, or was Napoleon Hill W.C. Fields a mentor?
No, he was Earl Nightingale's, or no, W.C. Fields.
You're right.
He was one of the 500 people that Napoleon Hill had interviewed.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
Which was
so then
the
he
charge
he
from
mentored
Andrew
Napoleon Hill.
Carnegie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if many people know, how Think and Grow Rich started, but it was about Andrew Carnegie. Napoleon Hill was just a little journalist like I was at one point in my life, and he was given this opportunity to interview Andrew Carnegie, who was the largest steel magnate and the richest man in the United States. And they had this hour-long interview about his success, and Andrew said, well, it's not over. Let's go back to my house and let's talk, more through the evening. And Napoleon Hill was like relieved because he didn't have any place to sleep that night. He didn't have any money for a hotel or anything. So he went back to Andrew Carnegie's giant mansion, and they talked well into the night. And then finally, Carnegie said,
How did they meet?
He was just put together. It was one of those coincidences, right? Serendipity things, like me being assigned to Bob.
Bob Proctor. Yeah.
He got assigned to interview Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie had been looking for somebody to help him figure out what the success principles were of all the successful people he knew. And he had been looking and looking for somebody, and he finally thought that Napoleon Hill might be the one. So he offered him that job and said, I'm not going to pay you anything. I want you to interview the 100 most popular. I'll put you in touch with all of these people.
Successful people at the time.
And he was actually holding a stopwatch under the desk, and he was giving Napoleon Hill 60 seconds to make a decision. And Napoleon Hill decided at about the 34-second mark and said, yeah, I'll do it. And it was a huge paradigm shift for him because he had promised his brother that he would put him through college and, pay for all of that, and he didn't have that money anymore. And he went on to interview something like 500 of the most successful people in the world, and that's how he put the book together. And it's astounding because...
It took him like 10 years?
Actually a little more than that.
More than that.
Yeah. And, at one point, Carnegie had told him that... he said, I want you to, actually at the end of the interview, he said, I want you to say this to yourself in the mirror every morning. And it was something about, I can't say it correctly, but it was about passing Carnegie at the post and winning, like actually passing him in life, in success. And Napoleon Hill was like, you're out of your mind. There's no way I'm going to pass you up. But he kept saying it to himself in the mirror because he had promised Carnegie that he would do it. And as it turned out, the Napoleon Hill Foundation is millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of success. And it's changed so many millions of people's lives. Millions of people's lives. So he did actually pass Carnegie.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
What was his reasoning? What was his... Why did he want him to write that book? Where did that motivation come from?
Well, you know how you and I had talked about being an unconscious competent? So there are people out there who, most of us, struggle to reach a competency. And we have to get past these stages to get to unconscious competent, which is how you know how to do it. Like, for instance, when you start to learn how to ride a bike. You don't know how to ride a bike. You struggle, you fall, you cry. Your parents have to get bandages. Everything's a mess. You hate it. And then you start getting it and you start getting it, and you finally work up to the point where you just get on a bike and ride a bike. You don't even think about it. Same with driving a car. Same with driving a clutch car. Like, you learn how to drive a clutch car initially, and it's hell. It's hell. You hate everybody. You hate anyone who's sitting next to you in the car. But eventually, it's just automatic. It's unconscious competence. So Carnegie recognized that and said, so many of the successful people I know, they don't understand how they got to where they got. They don't understand what they did. And he said, I want you to interview them and pick it apart and figure out what they did, what their success principles were. And as it turned out, all of them basically said everything that are in the primary chapters of this book. So, persistence, decision, the amazing autosuggestion, mastermind
principle.
Things like that. So that's why he wanted to have a book written about it, so that other people could understand. People who are, finding their way, conscious incompetent is what we call it, who are finding their way up. What do they do to make this happen in their lives?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Have you ever read the book? Because I was searching in that little chat when there were bookstores, right, where the self-help kind of areas, and I would look at some other things on Think and Grow Rich, and then I saw this Think and Grow Rich with the Peace of Mind. Did you ever read
No.
that book? Okay. I think it was I'm not sure on but I think Napoleon Hill, he wrote it later on in life. Yeah, I think
It's
he
interesting.
made a lot of money because he used the principles,
Yeah.
And then I think he lost it, and then he wrote the book Think and Grow Rich with the Peace of Mind.
Wow. That's really awesome. I'll have to check into that. I don't know that book.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I was just curious if you had heard about it. I mean, all you need is the principles to do anything, right?
Right.
I always talk about it a lot, actually, on the podcast, just because everything has been in line with the things that I've read in there, and I keep reading it.
Right. I know it. It's astounding. It really is. I think I try to read the book at least once a year. And then, like I said, Bob's film, I did like 180 days straight watching it over and over and over again. Watching
The film that you're
modules.
helping, that you're
Yeah,
a part of.
it's unbelievable because it gives you that much more breadth and depth to all of these principles.
Talk to me more about it. I want to hear more.
Oh no!
And where do I find it?
It's so much
it's
fun.
it's a video series.
Yeah, it could be almost like a mini series.
Okay.
On
Where is it at?
He's got it at, I'm kind of the only one who's really pushing it out there.
Oh, I see.
So it's at DianeArmitage.com.
Okay.
And he's got it at his website as well. And it's just, it's there, and it's amazing, and most people don't see it because there are so many other programs that they're teaching that are amazing. And I've really chosen to focus on Principles of Prosperity and Lead the Field. Lead the Field was initially Earl Nightingale's. In the 60s, it became the largest seller in the world. And it was primarily built for managers, people who wanted to be leaders, entrepreneurs, that kind of thing. And then, not to digress, but I'll get back. And then, but Lead the Field really was about leading your own life, like finding the acres of diamonds in your life, looking at greener pastures and deciding if, the greener pastures are really over there or if they're really here in your life. But leadership styles, time management, what he called time management, which was kind of an interesting solution, all kinds of things. It's a beautiful, beautiful series. So Bob redid that series in the year 2000, and I was the first person to get it.
20 years ago.
Yeah. And he redid it, but he used all of the original content of Earl Nightingale's, and then he would expound on it himself with everything he teaches, the stick man, the conscious, the subconscious, the whole thing that all of his...
What's the stick man?
Oh, the stick man's really cool. Well, the stick man is just kind of like it's like a head with a stick, right?
Stick man.
So it was something that was devised by a gentleman, Thurman Fleet, in the 30s, and it explains what the mind is, because when you tell people to think about their mind, they think about their brain. They're not thinking about how the mind works. But once you understand how the mind works, then you understand how everything works in your life. So your conscious mind is the top half. It's not literally. Conscious mind is the top half, and then subconscious mind is the bottom half of the circle. And the conscious mind is the one that accepts and believes and chooses. And all of those thoughts feed directly into the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind has no ability to reject. So it's wide open to whatever the conscious mind chooses and decides. And the subconscious mind is what puts it into action, which create the results in your life. So your subconscious mind is actually the cause of the effect in your life. But you have to look at what your conscious mind has been accepting, whether it's paradigms from your childhood, whether it's what your peers taught you, whether it's what your teachers taught you. I had a teacher in college tell me I was the worst writer he'd ever seen. And I thought, at that point, I had enough confidence to just sort of laugh at that. But there are people who stop.
But those are those things that hold you back.
Right.
You remember those things.
So every time your conscious mind is feeding all this stuff into your subconscious mind, what you get emotionally involved with is what becomes the paradigm in that subconscious mind. So there's all kinds of thoughts that can flow through. But if you get emotionally involved with it, positively or negatively, it then holds on to that and creates it. And the more you repeat that thought, the more strong that paradigm grows. And then it becomes the action and the result in your life. So if you look at people who are, for instance, afraid of getting cancer, and they think about it all the time.
The fear of getting cancer.
Their fear of getting cancer. They're emotionally involved with a negative result, but they're so emotionally involved with it, and they're thinking about it, and they're pushing it away. And the more they push away, the more they're thinking about it and getting emotionally involved with it. And so then they're amazed when it manifests in their body. And I'm not saying that,
right.
But I mean, it's amazing how, it happens.
Yeah.
So that's how the stick man is. So anyway, so Bob started explaining all of that with all of that in Lead the Field. And so he made it 4 times the size. And it's this phenomenal program. And I fell in love with it in 2000, and my life changed in months. It went from here to here. And it was already pretty rocking. So I really love Lead the Field. And so I've become a
Lead the Field.
Right. So I have a website called leadthefieldprogram.com, and it's also at dianearmitage.com. So I teach groups on an ongoing basis through that process. It's 11 chapters. So Bob did the same with Principles of Prosperity. He took Napoleon Hill's original stuff, and then he just embarked and told more, and included the stick person in this. And it talked about the 7 levels of awareness, and talked about, things that just were touched on but not
what are the 7
expanded.
I
knew you were going to ask me that.
The 7 levels of awareness.
Memory, will.
Memory, will.
Oh my goodness, put me on the spot. I used to have a mnemonic for it so I could remember. I'm going to be in trouble.
It's all good. I was there's this lady that would travel around with the brain, and it's 5 things she said that the brain would need. One is of course nutrition. What do you call it? Air and food, right? But I always have a hard time remembering them, and it's so easy, right? But so food, right? Nutrition, movement. Newness, challenge, and love. So, nutrition, right? Air and food, movement, challenge, newness, and love, connection, right?
Interesting. For the brain or for the mind?
I mean, it's all connected, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you start going down the rabbit hole with started studying fascia, and you just see how these fibroblasts, I don't know if you're familiar with fascia, and how they look like little neurons, and I mean, most cutting edge neuroscience. I mean, it seems like it's all one, right?
Well,
if you really break it down.
Yeah.
The way we're intertwined, and just everything's interconnected. And
mind is connected to body.
Right.
Like we were saying.
But she was just talking about, she would lecture college, college students and stuff. Go to she would actually bring a human brain. She's pretty
a real one.
A real one.
Oh.
She would take it out of a case, and she was like, "This is a human brain," and then she would go into her speech. Yeah. But I just thought that was just put simply, the things that we need, but again, we have circuits that are hardwired, right? So how do we make those changes, you know?
Right.
And that's always like interesting for me, because me working with jiu-jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
right? You see those things happening. And I think of Scott Sonnen, he found his learning style and that neuroplasticity happening. Things happen, right? And so I'm always like, just like, how does that happen? It changes people forever. Somebody with low self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
lack of confidence, and it rewires them. And you talk about the traumas and stuff, and like fighting and doing jiu-jitsu can be traumatic, right? Like just even training, right? But it's that stress, the high levels of stress, and then you overcoming that just kind of rewires you, it seems like,
Right. Right.
and it just changes people forever. They become completely different people.
Yeah, what I find
Completely.
interesting about people who study jiu-jitsu is that they become very peaceful warriors, so to speak. They're not confrontational people. They become very peaceful.
They're more confident, right? More
Right.
confident.
I guess, but it's not a combative
Right.
thing.
Right.
It's just really an interesting science.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, but you need tact foot with it too, because you need.
Yeah.
We do the same movements over and over and over, so we need to tact foot kind of balances you out,
Well, I would think that TACFIT would work in any industry, any sport.
No, for sure, all sports. But I'm jiu-jitsu. I'm biased, but
Yeah.
What I always think of that for myself and for my students and my jiu-jitsu family, my friends.
Well, it's interesting because I think of jiu-jitsu as being more flexibility, movement, all that sort of thing anyway. But you say that TACFIT brings in this whole new level, this whole new layer of how you perform, how you think. Because that's what's so cool about TACFIT. It's not just a fitness system. It's how you think. It's how you live your life.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's more than just like we talk about this,
Yeah.
a fitness, fitness, get in shape, or 4 weeks shred. It's like, no, it's a lifestyle. It's a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
I think of jiu-jitsu like that too, right? It's a way of life. Like you can't get your black belt. You can't do anything if you don't really fully commit to the process.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah.
And that's the thing with the certification. Like we just started the certification, right? And it's 11 weeks to do a certification, and like you can go to other certifications. It's 2 days. You just show up. Sometimes he just reads off, PowerPoints and stuff. But like, no, here you're going to actually do work. You're going to do the reps, and everybody's working. You can see how hard everybody's working around the world, to make sure not that they're going to make like money on the thing, but because they really care, they believe in what it can do for people. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Too,
Yeah.
That you actually just started that, and so many people are already involved in
Yeah.
the virtual certification.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, no
Really
paid
incredible.
advertisement, right? It was
Right.
just like pretty much organic, Of
Pretty
course,
amazing.
the awesome team, but behind the scenes.
I'll tell you what.
My God, oh my God,
So committed, it's unbelievable. So committed, it's so cool. It's cool. It's neat. I mean, I've talked to a few people who've heard of TACFIT, and I think in 6 months it's going to be much, much more,
Yeah,
much bigger.
yeah. It's all the right stuff. The world's ready for it. It seems
Yeah.
like
Right, exactly.
Like
It's
a
kind of
few-
like The Secret, right?
yeah, pretty much, right?
The
Overnight.
world was ready for it, and
And
was
Bob Proctor, you're right, getting involved with The Secret, just a
Yeah.
random. Hey, I'm gonna ask him too. Hey, and then he got in there into the thing, right? And that
changed his life.
changed his life.
But you think about all the lives. I mean, what the thing I love about working with Bob is that as his writer is how many millions of lives I've been able to touch as his writer. I think that's amazing. I love it. Now I work on like videos and scripts for some of the programs that they do, and I see what happens when people, it's just so awesome.
Yeah.
So cool.
Does he still travel around?
Well, lately not with the
Right, the
pandemic,
COVID,
but for the
right.
most part, he was doing
86. He's just like
on
popping
stage,
on planes.
3
and
days, 3-day seminars, just boom.
He's
Yeah.
high. He's high on life, right? He loves what he
He's
does.
unbelievable. At one point, this might be a year and a half ago, he was really sick. He was not feeling well at all. And he hadn't been feeling well for a long time. And he had to get on stage, and he has a business partner, Sandy, and she was super sick. She couldn't even get out of bed. So he had to be on stage by himself for 3 days straight, and he just powered through it like no one knew. No one knew. And he told me afterwards, he said, I thought I was going to die.
Mm.
But he said, my paradigm is so strong. I've been teaching this for so long. I believe in it so much. He said, it's the paradigm that got me through those 3 days. It was really incredible.
Amazing. It's like going back to Jordan with him playing with the flu for that playoff game, or the food poisoning,
Oh, the food poisoning.
I have a moment like that too in my jiu-jitsu career.
Did you really?
Yeah, it just kind of shows you like the power of the mind, how we are energy, and like all the other stuff is just excuses.
It's true.
Right?
It's true.
But that power of the mind, right?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, we are spiritual beings in a human body, and we are absolutely limitless. What we can do with our mind is incredible. Like everything that's ever existed in this world is because somebody thought of it. And it's just
crazy.
It's incredible what we're at and what we're doing. And like I look at what we've been going through with COVID recently, and I think, everyone, there's so many people out there, there's consciousness that says there's loss, there's poverty, there's fear, there's rioting, there's all this negative stuff happening out there. I look at it as this incredible opportunity. And I'm not looking at it to like grab.
Right.
But it's such an incredible opportunity to take a look at your life and say, am I really living the life I want to live? Or do I really want to do something now that's different? Because you may have lost your job. You may have had all of your money go away. You may have, it gives everyone this opportunity to say, what do I want to do that's new in my life? How do I want to change things? Yeah. And the economy is only in your mind.
Right.
The economy is only in your mind.
That's the truth.
I tell myself that every morning. And, I like Reverend Michael Beckwith is one of my favoriteest human beings on the planet.
He does the Agape
Live.
Agape Live, yeah.
And his church is here in Beverly Hills, and unbelievable. He was in The Secret as well.
Right.
And that's how I first got to know him.
It's
and
the dreadlocks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now he's bald.
Oh, he's bald. Okay.
He's
It's
beautiful.
been a while.
It's amazing. But I got to do some work with him after The Secret. We did The Science of Getting Rich with Michael Beckwith and Jack Canfield.
The Science of Getting Rich.
Right.
Is that the secret behind the secret?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Wallace Wattles was the
guy Grant
who
told
wrote
me
the
about
book.
it, and I got it. Yes. What's his name?
Wallace Wattles wrote the book, The Science of Getting Rich.
Back in like the 1800s?
Or no, about the time that Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich.
The Science
of Getting Rich.
The science behind getting the science.
It was the secret behind the secret.
The secret behind the secret. So
right.
The Science of Getting Rich. Yeah, I remember that. It was a small little book.
Mm-hmm.
And the gist, I always try to summarize everything, and the gist is like that I got. This is is doing more than you get paid for.
Oh.
That was if it was like one sentence.
Impression of increase.
Just like doing more than you get paid for.
Right.
And you will always increase your. Well,
I think that's also in this book, isn't it?
I'm sure, Rich. Of course, yeah, of course.
Yeah, where you make yourself, irreplaceable.
Right.
Instead
of being like, oh, I want to get paid more, like, man, give more than you receive, and guess what's going to happen?
Well, I love what Earl Nightingale says in Lead the Field. He says, it's people who say, give me the heat and I'll give you the wood. And instead, it's like, no, that's not the way it works. Service is the key. He talks a lot about that in Lead the Field. Service is the key. If you feel like you're not making enough money, increase your service, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's pretty
like
cool.
Speaking of energy, like you give, right? You give your energy, and then if you're working for somebody or whatever you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just automatically, because you're giving that, you receive back.
Absolutely. Well, it's the boomerang effect.
Right.
That is the law of laws. It's called the law of cause and effect. It's the law of laws.
Yeah.
Everything you put out there is going to come back to you. Everything you put out there negatively is going to come back to you. If you get up every morning and say, man, I'm on an adventure. So that's what I was starting to say. Michael Beckwith in his sermon recently, he was just like, if you get out of bed and you say, I am on an adventure. Today, I'm having an adventure. That's a whole different thing. That's like when you were a kid and you used to be able to go on a field trip and you pack your little chocolate milk and your peanut butter sandwich. You go on the bus and you'd be on a field trip at the zoo. Those exciting, fun days, or like your first day of summer vacation when you're like, if you wake up with that energy and that attitude, look at what happens in your day.
Yeah.
Everything flows. It's how you look at it. It's how you choose to look at it.
Yeah. It's all in our mind, right?
Yeah, it really is. I just love talking about it, as you could tell,
Yeah.
because there's just so much. There's so much about it.
What's your favorite moment working with Bob?
Oh my
He's
gosh.
always coming up when we talk, just because
I
he's been
know
such a big influence.
I know it. I think, so many moments with Bob. My favorite chapter in my book, Conversations with Bob, was about how he talked me into moving to Laguna Beach. It was really kind of funny. He and people just are still astounded with it. So I had been working on a giant real estate website. It was like a members website. So they had built this huge site. It was like a $700,000 site, and nobody was buying anything. It was a membership site. And so they contracted me, and they flew me from Denver to California and relocated me for a 3-year contract. So kind of had to rewire that whole thing and make that thing work. Well, after like 8 months, I was back in the corporate world after being an entrepreneur for about 10 years, 5 years actually. And I was like, nah, I want to get back into my entrepreneurial world. So like 8 months later, I was able to say, hey, we're fixed, we're good. It's time for me to move on. So I had let Bob know that I was moving along in those lines, and he was letting me make that decision myself. So I called him from my car when I was driving away from that office, and I said, hey, I've resigned, I'm free, I can start working on your stuff again. And he's like, that's great. And he's like, are you going to go back to Denver? And I said, yeah, I'm not ready to go back to Denver yet. He's like, well, where do you want to live? And I said, anywhere in the world? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I like Italy. And he's like, does it have internet? Can I call you? And I was like, I don't know. He said, well, let's pick some place in the United States first so that, you and I can continue our contact. So I said, well, I really love Laguna Beach. I love Laguna Beach. I had seen it for one day in 1994, and I had written on the next day on a gold card that I was going to move to Laguna Beach. And I said, I love Laguna Beach. This was 2000 now, 5 years later.
You were living where at the time?
I was living down in Carlsbad.
Okay.
And so I said, I love Laguna Beach. And I take a breath, and I said, but it's so expensive. That's the last thing you ever say to Bob, right? Because then you get like that silence. And I said, I just waited for him, right? Kind of cringing in my car. And he says, Diane? I said, yes. He says, are you in your car? And I said, yes. And I'm thinking, he's going to change the subject. He says, how far are you from Laguna Beach? And I think, oh, no. I said, well, I'm about 45 minutes. And he said, well, I want you to drive there right now. And I said, right now? And he's like, yeah, no. You're in your car, right? He said, just keep driving. And I was like, he said, when you get to Laguna Beach, I want you to take out a mailbox, and I want you to start forwarding your mail today to Laguna Beach. He says, you'll find a way to live there. So I drove up to Laguna Beach. I opened up a mailbox, P.O. box, started forwarding my mail.
Interesting, right?
A week later, out of nowhere, I get an email from nobody who's connected to me in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't forwarded to me, anything. It just dropped into my email, and it was a woman who, she and her husband had renovated a house. They tried to sell it through the summer. They were taking it off the market for the winter. It was a very reasonable rate. And I moved to Laguna 10 days later, 10 days after taking out that P.O. box. So actually,
you put the energy there. Your mail's going there.
Yeah. You have to take that step. You have to take that crazy step. And the crazier the step, the better. At one point, I was living in a condo right on the ocean in Laguna Beach, and I wanted to move up to the penthouse. And I called the landlord, and I said, hey, I think your renters are going to be moving soon. She's like, oh, they just got there. They're going to be there for 2 years. I'm like, no, they're going to move. I'm going to send you my security deposit. You just let me know when they're gone. And then I started buying stuff for the penthouse. So I rented a storage unit, started buying the rugs, the furniture. I picked out the paint. I started storing everything because I knew it was going to happen. And, 6 months later, 5 months later, she called me. I can still remember where I was. And she said, you're not going to believe this. They just bought a house in Dana Point. And of course, I called Bob because I told him, I said, I want you to visualize this place too, because your visualizer is bigger than my visualizer. So they will get like the real energy going. So I called him right away and I said, hey, I got into the penthouse. And I said, I'm moving there. I said, now the next thing is to convince her to sell. And he said, you don't need to convince her to sell. You need to convince yourself to buy. So, it was those kind of comments from Bob that would kind of like shift you up. So much fun.
I want to check out the videos on your website, Diane Armitage.
Yeah, DianeArmitage.com.
What's his website? Bob Proctor.
It's Proctor Gallagher Institute.
Proctor Gallagher Institute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, they're both, so Lead the Field and Principles of Prosperity are both like paid programs.
Okay.
So it unlocks once you get involved with it, but then I facilitate along and we do like all these readings and Zoom calls and all that sort of stuff. It's fun. It's really fun. I love it. It really keeps you, when you're in it every day. Like I just wrote a whole bunch of scripts for a new group of guys who wanted to do this kind of work with teenagers. So they had me write 4 months of scripts for an app that they developed, and they're just launching that next week. And it's so fun to be in that mode, writing it every day, thinking it every day, studying it every morning, because there's just nothing in your life that can happen to you. You just
being in the zone,
fly.
being high on life, right?
Yeah. I mean, everyone has a
work.
bad day, but
Right,
it doesn't
right.
take long to get out of it because you recognize where you are. It's cool. One of these days we'll have to talk about that whole conscious, competent thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you explained it basically, a little bit.
Yeah.
In our talk just now.
Yeah, that was something that Bob and I devised.
Because you
one day.
told me like you're unconsciously competent. And
Yeah.
I'm like, thanks.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Thank you. That's awesome.
It's like my friend always he looks like he just woke up, but man, the guy's like super smart, super like he can figure out anything. He's just a beast, he can just do so much, but he looks like he's just
Your gifts are your gifts are your gifts, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you look like or what you do. It's crazy. It's like my guy Richard that I work with, my developer. So amazing. I've never met him in person. Isn't that funny?
Oh, really?
Never met him in person, but he's worked with me for like 12 years.
Wow.
The guy just is unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
Yeah, he's a beast.
It's just amazing, But yeah, so like unconscious incompetence is where most of the world exists. Unconscious incompetence. They don't know that they don't know.
Right.
And they're ignorant. That doesn't mean that they're stupid. They just don't know that
Right.
they can move their lives to a new place.
Right.
So once they get that inkling, then you become a conscious incompetent. So you're trying to change your life. You're
Right.
working on your paradigms. You're making everything happen, conscious incompetent. And then, and it's frustrating. And that's where the terror barriers hit. That's where the this isn't working stuff hits. You forget that the law of gender has its own law of when things are going to happen. You try to set your time frame, but you've got to let the universe have its way with whatever's going on, making things all fall into play for you. And then conscious competent is where you kind of got it dialed in. You're feeling good. You're seeing some results. You're like, okay, I got to keep working on it. And I feel really like that's where I am most of the time, conscious competent, because I'm constantly working on this, keeping it in my mind. And then unconscious competent is where it just flows. You just are there. And that's really where we all want to be, where you're just moving through your day and it's just flow.
Just flow.
And you're changing so many lives around you because of that.
Just flow. I like
Yeah.
that.
I love it too.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, I had a great time. We
Yeah.
can talk about this for days.
Yeah, we'll talk again. And yeah.
Thanks.
Keep it going.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great being in your circumference.
Thank you, Diane.
Great
Thank you for
energy
everything.
field. Thank you.